That Christmas Eve, the biting cold of Indiana seeped through my thin jacket as I stood before the glossy oak door. The phone in my hand was still warm from my grandfather's brief call. "Ethan, come over right now. I'm at your parents' new house," he had said, his voice brimming with joy as if he were waiting to share a wonderful secret. Grandpa Henry, a successful businessman always busy with his construction company in Boston, rarely had time to visit. Just the thought of seeing him made me smile, despite the bone-chilling cold of the winter night. I pushed the door open, and immediately the warmth from the fireplace and the savory aroma of roasted meat enveloped me. Grandpa sat at the head of the dining table, his eyes sparkling like stars when he saw me. He stood up and hugged me tightly, his familiar woody cologne making me forget all my exhaustion in an instant. "Ethan, do you like this house?" he asked, his voice full of pride, as if he had just handed me a priceless treasure. "Yes, it's a beautiful house, Grandpa," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, "but it's my parents' house." A moment of deafening silence followed. Grandpa's face stiffened, his eyes widening as they darted from me to my father Richard, then to my stepmother Linda sitting across the table. My father, who always maintained a calm demeanor, suddenly turned pale, his hand trembling as he held his wine glass. Linda coughed, forcing a strange smile, but her eyes glinted with panic. "Your parents' house," Grandpa repeated, his voice dropping as cold and sharp as the night wind outside. "Ethan, explain yourself." I didn't understand what was happening, but a sense of unease surged within me. I glanced at my father, waiting for an explanation, but he only lowered his head, avoiding my gaze. Linda quickly interjected, her voice trembling. "Henry, there must be a misunderstanding. This is the family's house." But Grandpa didn't look at her. He looked at me, and in that moment I knew a terrible secret was about to be revealed. "Hello, my name is Ethan Parker. The story I'm about to tell is about the years I lived in the shadow of injustice, sidelined by my own family. If you've ever felt like you didn't belong anywhere, like you were treated as an outsider, then perhaps you'll understand me. But even if you haven't, I still want you to hear this story. A story about a boy who grew up with a heart full of scars and how he found light amidst the darkness. I was born in a small suburban town in Indiana where the streets were lined with golden leaves in the fall and everyone knew each other like family. But my family was different from the others. My mother Laura passed away shortly after giving birth to me due to medical complications I still don't fully understand. All I know is that she was the only light I never got to meet. My father, Richard Parker, was a stern man who always kept his distance from me, as if my existence was a reminder of the pain he wanted to forget. When I was 3, my father remarried Linda, a woman with a cold smile and calculating eyes. They had a son together, Michael, or Mike as everyone called him. Mike was the center of their world. To my father, Mike was the pride and the future of the Parker family. To Linda, Mike was everything she lived to protect and spoil. And me, I was the stepchild, the unwanted kid, the faint shadow in the house I called home. From a young age, I felt the difference. When I was 5, I remember sitting in the corner of the living room, watching Mike receive a remote-controlled toy car, the kind every kid dreamed of. I got a used plastic car with chipped wheels, which my father said was good enough for me. "Mike needs new things to develop his intellect," Linda said, as if I wasn't worthy of anything better. When I got high grades at school, my father would just nod and say, "Not bad, but don't get complacent." Meanwhile, if Mike got a C, the whole house would celebrate as if he'd won a Nobel Prize. I wasn't a jealous kid. Honestly, I just wanted to be loved, to be acknowledged, even just once. But as the days passed, I realized that in my father's and Linda's eyes, I was never good enough. Linda would say things like, "Ethan, why don't you try to be more like Mike?" Or, "You should be grateful to live in this house." Those words, no matter how softly spoken, cut into me like knives. I started to wonder, was I really a burden? Was I truly unworthy of love? Our family wasn't poor, but we weren't rich either. My father worked as a manager at a local insurance company, while Linda stayed home as a housewife, doting on Mike like he was a little king. I wasn't allowed to complain because my father always reminded me I was lucky to have a roof over my head, but that roof never truly felt like mine. My room was a tiny attic space with a creaky old bed and a window overlooking a dark alley. Meanwhile, Mike had a spacious room filled with toys and posters of famous bands. Once I asked my father why I couldn't have a room downstairs like Mike, and he snapped, "Don't ask for too much, Ethan. Know your place." I grew up with words like those reminders that I wasn't important in this family, but I didn't let myself drown in sorrow. I learned to smile to pretend everything was fine. Even though a storm raged inside me, I told myself that one day I would escape the shadow of this family and prove I wasn't the useless person they thought I was. When I was 18, I graduated high school with decent grades, though no one at home noticed. I dreamed of going to college, becoming an engineer, or doing something to make Grandpa Henry, the only person who truly cared about me, proud. But that dream was quickly crushed. One evening, when I asked my father about applying for scholarships or loans for college, he looked at me with cold eyes. "Ethan, we don't have enough money," he said. "Mike needs to be prioritized. He has great potential and we have to invest in him." I stood there stunned, feeling like the world was collapsing beneath me. Mike, the brother who only played video games and hung out with friends, was the one chosen to fulfill his potential. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just nodded and left the room. That night I lay on my old creaky bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, and promised myself I would rise on my own. If my parents didn't believe in me, I would believe in myself. I started working at a Walmart in town, first as a cashier, then as a stockroom worker. The job wasn't easy. Long night shifts working through holidays and dealing with difficult customers left me exhausted. But I didn't complain. Every dollar I earned was a small step toward escaping my family. I rented a small run-down apartment with stained walls and a leaky faucet, but at least it was mine. I no longer had to hear Linda's snide remarks or see my father's disappointed looks. Meanwhile, Mike was fully supported by our parents. He attended a prestigious private school, drove a brand new car our father bought, and never had to lift a finger. Once Linda came to the store where I worked, saw me behind the cashier counter, and smirked. "Ethan, this is what you're doing. Such a shame. Mike will never have to do menial work like this." I gritted my teeth, forcing a smile, but inside I wanted to scream, "Why? Why wasn't I worthy of the same opportunities as Mike? Those years I lived in loneliness. I didn't have many friends because I spent most of my time working and saving money, but I wasn't entirely alone. Grandpa Henry was the one bright spot in my life. He lived in Boston, running a large construction company. He was a man of work. Occasionally when he had time, he would call me. Those calls were my lifeline. He talked about his projects, asked about my life, and always said, "Ethan, you're a strong young man. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise." I never told him how my father and Linda treated me. I didn't want him to worry, and part of me feared that if I spoke up, he'd think I was weak. Grandpa was the only one who told me about my mother. He said Laura was a gentle woman who loved books and dreamed of a fair world. He blamed himself for not being there when she gave birth to me, as work had kept him away. "If I had been there, things might have been different," he said, his voice choking. I didn't blame him. I only wished I could have met her even just once to know I had been loved. As the years passed, I grew accustomed to my independent life. I learned to fix the plumbing in my apartment, cook simple meals, and keep my heart from breaking further. But deep inside, there was always an emptiness, the void of a family I never truly had. I didn't know that while I was trying to build my own life, a great secret was being hidden by my father and Linda. A secret that would change everything. When I was 21, I was still living in my tiny rented apartment on the south side of town, working night shifts at the supermarket. Empty mornings, simple meals, and interrupted sleep had become so routine that they no longer felt unusual. I didn't have much, but I had my freedom, my own space, and a shred of self-respect that I had paid for with years of silent endurance. One early summer afternoon, while I was processing payments at the employee checkout, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Linda. "Come to the new house tonight. Address is 1432 Maple Ridge. Small party." I read the message 3 times, staring at the screen as if it would explain itself. I had never heard them mention anything about moving. There had been no hint that they were looking for a new house, and certainly no one had asked if I wanted to move in with them. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to act as if nothing had happened. But then I thought maybe this was a chance to reconnect, even just a little, even if it was just a polite gathering. I wanted to go, maybe to congratulate them, maybe to prove that I was no longer the sullen, quiet kid I used to be. I had changed, and I thought maybe they had too. I stopped by a small liquor store near the supermarket and picked out an affordable bottle of red wine, then swung by the embroidery shop to collect a handkerchief I had ordered the previous week. A small gift with the initials RP embroidered on it. I didn't have much money, but I wanted the gift I brought to be thoughtful. The new house was in a newly developed residential area on the west side of town, a place I had never set foot in. As my car turned onto a street lined with newly planted maples and manicured green lawns, it felt like I was entering another world. 2-story, semi-class houses with wooden doors, gray-tiled roofs, and red brick steps. Everything exuded a sense of abundance and order that I had never felt in our old house. I parked in front of the house with the address Linda had sent. It was a cream-colored home with a stone-stepped front yard, a wide porch, and arched windows overlooking a garden. I got out of the car holding the bottle of wine and the gift, and stood still for a few seconds in front of the door. For some reason my heart was pounding, not out of excitement, but because an indescribable feeling stirred within me as if I was about to step into something that didn't belong to me. Linda opened the door. She was wearing a silk dress, her makeup meticulously done. "Oh, Ethan, come in," she said, her smile as thin as the layer of blush on her cheeks. I stepped inside and looked around. A spacious living room with glossy wooden floors, a granite fireplace, beige armchairs, and a classic chandelier. Family photos already hung on the walls. My father and Linda's wedding picture. Mike holding a sports trophy. No photos of me. I wasn't surprised. My father was in the kitchen opening a bottle of wine, dressed in a white dress shirt, looking more relaxed than usual. When he saw me, he gave a single nod. "Oh, you're here." Nothing more. I handed over the wine and the gift, saying, "Congratulations on the new house, Dad." He took them, set them on the table without opening them, and turned away. The party consisted of just a few people, new neighbors, an older couple who were friends, and one of my father's colleagues. They chatted animatedly about the neighborhood, rising property prices, interior design, and the pool they planned to build in the backyard. I sat in a corner, silent, listening. No one asked where I was from. No one noticed that I poured myself water instead of wine. "We had to search forever to find this house," Linda said to the person next to her, her voice brimming with pride. "Luckily, we closed the deal just before the market prices shot up. Richard has a great eye for houses." My father nodded, smiling, not denying it. I sat there trying to smile along. I genuinely wanted to congratulate them, not for the house, but because I believed they had finally found something that made them happy. I didn't know that in that moment I was congratulating them for taking a gift that rightfully belonged to me. That night when I returned to my rented apartment, I opened my phone intending to send Grandpa Henry a quick message to check in. But I hesitated. He was getting older and busy. I didn't want to bother him. I set the phone down, lay on my bed, and stared at the peeling ceiling. Then I drifted off to sleep, completely unaware of the truth lying silently beneath my feet like an unexploded bomb. After the day I attended the housewarming party, everything seemed to return to its old rhythm, or at least the half-hearted routine I had long grown accustomed to. No one mentioned that day again. No one asked what I thought of the new house, and of course no one brought up the possibility of me moving in with them, but something strange started happening. From that point on, for every major holiday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Mike's birthday, even my father and Linda's wedding anniversary, I received an invitation to their house. They weren't warm, heartfelt invitations, but curt text messages. 6:00 p.m. Come for dinner. Mike's looking forward to seeing you. We have guests. Be on time. I went, not because I believed they had changed, but because I still felt the duty of a son. Each time I brought a small gift carefully chosen and wrapped by hand. But my gifts were usually set aside unopened in my presence, and no one offered a clear word of thanks. And the strangest thing was, they started pulling me into family photos. The first time was that Christmas. Linda called me over saying, "Ethan, stand closer to Mike. We're taking a family picture." I was surprised, but stepped forward. My father stood in the middle, his arm around Micah's shoulders. I stood at the edge of the frame, forcing an awkward smile. As the camera clicked, I felt like I had just stepped into a wordless play, and I was the supporting character thrown in to fill out the cast. In the times that followed, they kept pulling me into photos. At first, it was with the whole family. Later, sometimes just with my father. Once, Linda even placed her hand on my shoulder, smiling brightly. I didn't understand what was happening. Before, I had always been excluded from moments like these. The photos hung in the old house never featured me. So why were they doing this now? I asked once lightly after Mike's birthday dinner. Why have we been taking so many family photos lately? Linda laughed and said, "Oh, we just want to capture memories. You're part of the family too, aren't you?" I nodded, but my heart felt heavy. I wasn't naive. I knew something wasn't right, but I couldn't put a name to it. I only felt like I was being led along, forced into a fabricated frame I had never belonged to, as if I were playing the role of the harmonious eldest son in a photo, meant for display not as myself. And then on Christmas, when I was 23, the truth finally came to light. It was bitterly cold that day. I had just finished my shift at 4:30 in the afternoon, sitting in my rented apartment, drinking coffee, planning to show up a little late as usual. Just enough to make an appearance, eat a few bites, take a few photos, and leave early. My phone rang. It was Grandpa Henry. "Ethan, come over right now. I'm at your new house, 1432 Maple Ridge." I wanted to surprise you. I froze. Grandpa was here in Indiana. He rarely left Boston. His construction company always kept him tied up. I quickly threw on my jacket and rushed out the door. My mind swirled with questions. Why didn't he tell me he was coming? And why was he at my father's house? When I arrived, the house was glowing with Christmas lights. Wreaths hung on the door, and the twinkling lights of a Christmas tree shimmered through the window. I knocked my heart pounding. Linda opened the door, her smile stiffening when she saw me. "Ethan, why are you—" She stopped, her eyes darting over my shoulder, and I heard Grandpa's voice from inside. "Ethan, come in, my boy." Grandpa stood in the living room, tall and imposing, his silver hair gleaming under the chandelier. He hugged me a tight embrace that carried both excitement and a hint of tension. "I wanted to surprise the whole family," he said, looking around. "This house. It's wonderful, isn't it? Are you happy living here?" I hesitated, a wave of unease rising within me. I don't live here, Grandpa. I just visit." Grandpa's face changed. His smile vanished and his eyes narrowed, shifting from me to my father Richard, who stood near the fireplace, a glass of wine in his hand. Linda quickly jumped in, her voice syrupy. "Henry, there must be a misunderstanding. Ethan likes living independently, don't you, dear?" She looked at me, her eyes practically commanding me to agree. But Grandpa didn't look at her. He fixed his gaze on me, his voice lowering. Ethan, tell me the truth. You don't live here. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the entire room pressing down on my shoulders. I live in a rented apartment, Grandpa, on the south side of town. I pay for it with my supermarket wages. Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence, as if the air had been sucked out of the room. My father bowed his head, his hand tightening around his glass. Linda started to speak, her voice trembling. Henry, we thought it was best for Ethan. He wanted to be independent, and Mike needs space to... Enough! Grandpa cut her off, his voice sharp as a blade. Richard, explain yourself. 3 years ago, I sent you $500,000 to buy a 3-bedroom house in this neighborhood. A gift for Ethan to give him a good start. I made it clear. The house was for Ethan. So why is he living in a run-down apartment while you and your family are living in that very house? My father's face went pale as if the blood had drained from his body. Linda opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I stood there stunned, feeling the ground crumble beneath me. A house for me. $500,000. I looked at Grandpa Henry, then at my father, searching for an explanation, a sign that this was just a misunderstanding. But there was no misunderstanding. My father set his glass down, his voice shaky but trying to stay composed. I thought the house would be better used by the whole family. Ethan's independent. He doesn't need a big house like this. Mike's young. He needs a good environment to grow to study. Doesn't need... Grandpa roared, stepping toward my father. You're saying he doesn't need it, Ethan. The grandson I entrusted to your care is living in a rundown apartment, working night shifts to survive while you and your wife live in the house that was meant for him. What did you do with the money I sent? You put the house in your name, didn't you? My father didn't answer. He lowered his head, his shoulders trembling. Linda, regaining her voice, interjected. Henry, you don't understand. Ethan isn't my biological son. Mike is the future of this family. Ethan, he doesn't deserve a house like this. He's just... Shut up! Grandpa shouted, his voice echoing so powerfully it seemed to shake the room. Doesn't deserve Ethan is Laura's flesh and blood, my daughter's son. He's my grandson, and I trusted you, Richard, to take care of him. But what have you done? You stole the gift I meant for him, deceived me with these fake family photos. He pointed at the picture on the wall, the one of the whole family in the living room with me awkwardly standing at the edge. I thought Ethan was living happily here. I believed the photos you sent, but it turns out it was all a charade to hide your greed. My throat tightened. The photos, the times I was called over to pose for pictures, the staged moments I couldn't make sense of. It was all to deceive Grandpa Henry, to make him think I was part of this happy family. I looked at my father, waiting for an explanation, an apology, anything, but he remained silent, his eyes avoiding mine. Ethan. Grandpa Henry turned to me, his voice softening but still resolute. Go get your things. You're coming to Boston with me. This house'll make sure it belongs to you as I originally intended, and you, Richard, I'll be speaking with my lawyer. You'll answer for what you've done. Linda burst into tears, but I felt no pity for her. My father finally spoke, his voice trembling. Ethan, I just wanted what was best for the family. Best for the family. I repeated, my voice calm but cold. You never considered me part of this family. I've spent my whole life trying to make you proud, but all you ever saw was Mike. You took away my chance, and you didn't even bother to tell me the truth. I turned away, unable to look at him any longer. Grandpa Henry placed a hand on my shoulder, his eyes filled with pain, but also unwavering determination. Let's go, Ethan. You don't need to stay here anymore. The chill of Christmas night bit into my skin as we stepped out of the house that was supposed to be mine. The dim glow of streetlights illuminated the snow-covered street, and I could feel my heavy breaths blending into the frigid air. Grandpa led me to a sleek black SUV parked by the curb. The driver, a middle-aged man in a sharp suit, opened the door for us. To the hotel first, Grandpa said, his voice low but firm. I slid into the back seat beside him, feeling like I was stepping into a different world, a world I never thought I belonged to. "Are you okay, Ethan?" Grandpa asked, his eyes gentle but piercing, as if trying to read every thought in my mind. I don't know, Grandpa," I replied, my voice shaky. "Everything's happening so fast. I still don't fully understand." He nodded, placing a hand on my knee. "I know, but from now on, things will be different. You'll come to Boston with me. We'll start over, just the two of us." I looked out the window, the Christmas lights blurring past like faint sparks. Boston, a city I'd only heard about through Grandpa's stories where he built his construction empire from nothing. I had never been there, never thought I'd have the chance. But now it was where I would begin again. A new life, a chance to escape the shadow of my past. The next morning, we took an early flight to Boston. I sat by the window, gazing down at the endless snow-covered fields below, feeling like I was leaving behind an old, worn-out world for a dream. Grandpa Henry sat beside me quietly reading a business newspaper. But every now and then he glanced at me with an encouraging smile. When the plane landed at Logan Airport, a biting Boston wind greeted us. James, Grandpa Henry's driver, was waiting with the familiar SUV. We drove through the bustling city streets where skyscrapers towered overhead, their steel and glass gleaming under the winter sun. I had never seen anything like it. Indiana, with its narrow roads and modest houses, seemed to belong to another world. The car turned into an upscale suburban neighborhood where the streets were paved with stone lined with ancient oaks and sprawling mansions. James stopped in front of a large iron gate, beyond which a driveway led to a 3-story mansion surrounded by perfectly manicured lawns and vibrant red rose bushes, even in the middle of winter. My jaw dropped, unable to believe my eyes. "Is this your house, Grandpa?" I asked, my voice trembling. Grandpa Henry laughed heartily, clapping me on the shoulder. "Welcome to my home, Ethan. And now it's your home, too." Grandpa's mansion wasn't just a house. It was a palace. The carved wooden front door opened into a grand foyer with marble floors, a spiral staircase leading upstairs, and abstract paintings lining the walls. The living room was 3 times the size of my rented apartment, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a backyard garden, complete with a shimmering pool and an outdoor barbecue area. The scent of pine and leather from the luxurious furniture made me feel like I had stepped into a 5-star hotel. I don't know what to say," I whispered, standing in the middle of the living room, still clutching my small bag of belongings. "You don't need to say anything," Grandpa Henry replied, leading me upstairs. "Your room is here." He opened the door to a spacious bedroom with a king-size bed, a walnut desk, and a window overlooking the garden. A brand-new laptop sat on the desk, and a soft plush rug covered the floor. "This is where you can start over. No pressure, no burdens, just a fresh start." I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling like I was dreaming. Just hours ago, I was in my run-down apartment with a leaky faucet and peeling ceiling. Now I was here in a room I wouldn't have dared to imagine. But alongside the overwhelming awe was a lingering ache. The house in Indiana, the house that was meant to be mine, still felt like a thorn in my heart. That evening, Grandpa Henry took me to a fancy restaurant in downtown Boston. We sat in a quiet corner, the candlelight flickering on the table. He ordered an expensive bottle of wine, but I only took a small sip, still unaccustomed to such luxury. "Ethan," Grandpa Henry began, his voice low and serious, "there are things we need to talk about your father, the house, and what happened." I nodded, my heart pounding. I knew this conversation wouldn't be easy. 3 years ago, I sent Richard $500,000 to buy the house in Maple Ridge. I wanted it to be a gift for you, a foundation for you to build your future. I was busy with the company, unable to oversee the purchase myself, so I trusted Richard to handle it. I thought he would follow my wishes. He paused, his eyes darkening. But I was wrong. I clenched my fists under the table, trying to keep my voice steady. So Dad kept the house for himself. That's not all. Grandpa Henry said, his voice thick with anger. I've been sending Richard money since you were a child, not just for the house. I sent money every year to cover your school fees, clothes, everything you needed to grow up in the best conditions. I thought Richard was taking care of you the way I wanted. But today, when I heard you talk about living in a rented apartment working night shifts at a supermarket, I realized he kept it all for himself and his new family. It felt like someone had punched me in the chest. School fees, clothes, the things I never had. All those years wearing hand-me-downs, eating instant noodles, and working myself to exhaustion to make ends meet. It could have been different. My father, the man I tried so hard to please, had taken not only the house but also the opportunities Grandpa Henry meant for me. I didn't know about any of that money, I said, my voice choking. Dad never told me. I thought he didn't have enough, so I had to manage on my own. Grandpa Henry slammed his hand on the table, making the wine glasses tremble. That bastard! He growled, drawing glances from nearby tables. I trusted him with you, thinking he'd treat you well, but he betrayed me, and he betrayed your mother, Laura. Hearing my mother's name made my eyes sting. I had never met her, but through Grandpa's stories I knew she was a gentle woman who wanted a good life for me. The thought that my father had stolen what she and Grandpa intended for me ignited a fury I couldn't suppress. What are you going to do, Grandpa? I asked, though I could guess part of the answer. I'm going to sue Richard, he said, his voice cold as ice. I'll make sure the house is transferred to you, and I'll cut off all financial support to him. He doesn't deserve a single cent. I stared at the table in silence. Part of me wanted my father to pay to face the consequences of his actions, but another part, the part that had grown up in neglect and pain, just wanted to let it go. I was tired of living in resentment. I didn't want my new life in Boston to be tainted by lawsuits and disputes. Grandpa, I said, my voice soft but firm, don't sue him. I know you're angry, and so am I. But it's already happened. I don't want to drag this out. Cutting off his financial support is enough to make them realize they can't keep taking advantage of you. I just want to start over here with you. Grandpa Henry looked at me, his eyes softening, though I could still see the pain in them. Are you sure, Ethan? You have every right to claim what's yours. I'm sure, I replied. That house, it doesn't matter anymore. I want to build my future, not live to fix the past. He nodded slowly, placing a hand on my shoulder. You're stronger than I thought, Ethan. Your mother would be proud of you. The weeks that followed in Boston were an emotional journey. I moved permanently into Grandpa Henry's mansion, and each day felt like I was learning to live again from scratch. Grandpa didn't just give me a home, he gave me a chance to rediscover myself. He took me to visit his construction company, a modern building in downtown Boston with bright offices and a bustling team of employees. He introduced me to everyone as Henry Parker's grandson, and for the first time I felt recognized, seen as a person of value. Would you like to try working here? He asked one day as we stood overlooking a construction site in the suburbs. You don't have to do big things right away. You can start with small projects. Learn as you go. I hesitated. I had never imagined myself working in construction with its technical blueprints and complex numbers, but the trust in Grandpa Henry's eyes made me want to try. I'll give it a shot, Grandpa, I said, but I can't promise I'll be good at it right away. He laughed heartily. No one's good from the start, Ethan, but you have heart and determination. That's all I need. I started working at his company initially as an assistant in the planning department, organizing documents and tracking project progress. The work wasn't easy, but with each passing day, I learned to read blueprints, understand construction processes, and even began contributing ideas during meetings. My colleagues, who at first only knew me as the boss's grandson, gradually looked at me with respect. They saw me work hard, stay late to finish tasks, and refuse to rely on Grandpa Henry for special treatment. Outside of work, I began exploring Boston. I walked through its lively streets, visited museums, and spent hours in coffee shops reading books or simply watching people pass by. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had time to breathe, to dream, to become a better version of myself. Though life in Boston gave me hope, the scars of my past didn't fade easily. Some nights I lay in the comfortable bed in my new room, but dreamed of my old rented apartment, hearing Linda's mocking voice or seeing my father's cold gaze. I wondered if I truly deserved this life, or if it was all a dream that would vanish. Grandpa Henry noticed when I grew quiet. One evening, as we sat by the fireplace, he handed me an old framed photo. It was my mother, Laura, smiling brightly, holding a small dog. "Your mother always wanted you to be happy," he said. "I couldn't be there for her when she needed me most. But I won't let that happen with you." I held the frame, tears silently falling. "I wish I could have met her," I whispered. "You're more like her than you know," he said. "She was strong but gentle. You have her heart." Those words were like a healing balm. I started keeping a journal, writing down my thoughts, dreams, and even my pain. I no longer wanted to run from my past. I wanted to face it, understand it, and let it make me stronger. One morning, about 3 months after moving to Boston, I received a letter from Indiana. The envelope had no sender's name, but the familiar handwriting made my heart tighten. It was from my father. I opened it, my hands trembling. Inside was a single sheet of paper with short handwritten lines. "Ethan, I know I have no right to write this letter. What I've done is unforgivable. I was wrong to keep the house, to keep the money your grandfather sent for you. I let the pain of losing your mother turn me into a terrible father. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I want you to know I regret it. Linda and Mike have moved out of the house. I'm in the process of transferring ownership to you as your grandfather intended. I hope one day you can look at me without seeing disappointment. Richard." I read the letter 3 times. My emotions a mix of anger, pain, and a faint sense of relief. I didn't know if I could forgive him. The years of being abandoned, treated as an outsider, couldn't be erased by a single letter. But I knew I didn't want to carry resentment forever. I showed the letter to Grandpa Henry. He read it silently for a long time, then said, "It's your decision, Ethan. If you want to take the house, I'll help you. If not, I'll respect your choice." I thought about the house in Maple Ridge with its green lawn and warm fireplace. It had once been my dream, but now I didn't need it to feel worthy. "I don't want the house, Grandpa," I said. "I want to sell it and use the money to go to college. I want to become an engineer like I always dreamed." Grandpa Henry smiled, his eyes sparkling with pride. "That's my grandson." I enrolled in a university in Boston, majoring in civil engineering. With Grandpa Henry's support and the money from selling the house, I began the educational journey I once thought was impossible. The first days at school weren't easy. I was older than most of my classmates, and the complex technical concepts kept me up late studying, but I didn't give up. Whenever I felt like quitting, I thought of my mother, Grandpa Henry, and the promise I made to myself. I wouldn't let my past define my future. In Boston, I also found new friends, people who didn't know my past but liked me for who I was. I joined an engineering club where I met Emma, a smart girl with a radiant smile who teased me for my habit of taking detailed notes. For the first time, I felt like I had a community, a place where I belonged. Grandpa Henry remained my greatest anchor. He wasn't just a guide, but a friend, always reminding me that I was stronger than I thought. Some evenings we sat by the fireplace sharing stories about my mother, about the days he built his company, and about my dreams. The house in Indiana was sold, and the money was deposited into my tuition account. My father didn't contact me again, and I didn't reach out to him. Maybe one day I'll be ready to talk to forgive, but for now I wanted to focus on the present, on what I could build. 2 years have passed since that fateful Christmas night when the truth about the house and Grandpa Henry's money was exposed. Boston has become my home, not just because of its bustling streets or towering skyscrapers, but because it's where I found myself. I'm in my second year of college, majoring in civil engineering, and each day I feel closer to my dream of becoming an engineer, a dream my father once crushed with the excuse of not enough money. I found a community of friends, a clear purpose, and, most importantly, a sense that I deserve what I've achieved. But while I was building my new life in Boston, back in Indiana, my father's family, Richard, Linda, and Mike, was falling apart. I didn't know much about them over the past 2 years, except for a few rumors from old acquaintances in town. They said my father had lost his job at the insurance company, that Linda no longer hosted lavish parties, and that Mike, the pride of the Parker family, had dropped out of college after just 1 semester. I didn't dwell on it. The past was the past, and I had learned not to let it pull me back. Until one day, the past came knocking. One late autumn afternoon, while I was studying for midterms in the university library, my phone buzzed. It was an unfamiliar number from Indiana. I hesitated, but answered. Linda's voice came through weak and trembling, devoid of the arrogance it once carried. "Ethan, it's Linda," she said, her voice faltering. "I know you're busy, but I need to talk to you about the family." I gripped the phone, a chill running down my spine. "Family?" The word sounded foreign coming from her. "What's going on?" I asked, my tone colder than I intended. "We're in trouble, Ethan. Real trouble. I thought maybe you could help." I stayed silent, letting her continue. Linda launched into the long story, her voice a mix of desperation and an attempt to cling to dignity. After Grandpa Henry cut off all financial support, my father Richard lost his steady income. He had been fired from his job, unable to focus amid the family's turmoil. Linda couldn't find work, having never held a job since marrying my father. They had sold most of their possessions to pay off debts, but it wasn't enough. The house in Maple Ridge, though transferred to me and later sold, was no longer theirs to live in. They had moved to a small apartment on the edge of town, which Linda described as cramped and unworthy of our family. And Mike. Linda paused, her voice choking. "Mike's struggling, Ethan. He's working at a fast food restaurant, but he's not used to it. He doesn't know how to handle things like that. He needs help." I let out a laugh, not out of amusement, but from the irony. Mike, the spoiled little brother who was once treated like a king, now had to work to survive. Mike, who had a new car, a room full of toys, and never had to worry about money, was now struggling in a job I had done since I was 18. I felt a fleeting sense of satisfaction, but it was quickly replaced by an emptiness. "Linda," I said, my voice calm but firm, "you're calling me for help after everything that happened. After Dad took my house, after you said I didn't deserve it. You think I'll forget the years I was treated like an outsider, like a burden?" Linda was silent for a moment, then spoke, her voice almost a whisper. "Ethan, I know we were wrong, but we're family. Mike's your brother. You can't turn your back on your family." "Family," I repeated, my voice laced with bitterness. "You and Dad never treated me like family. You said I wasn't worthy. Dad took not just the house, but the money Grandpa sent for my education, for my life. And now you want me to help Mike, the one who was always favored over me, no Linda. Let Mike learn to stand on his own like I had to. Let your family figure it out. I don't owe you anything." I hung up my hands, still gripping the phone, my heart pounding. Linda's words echoed in my mind. Family. Mike needs help. But those words no longer had the power to sway me. Not after everything they had done. Over the past 2 years, I hadn't heard directly from my father, Linda, or Mike. Bits of gossip from Indiana reached me through old acquaintances, but I didn't seek them out. I was busy with my new life in Boston, my class's projects at Grandpa Henry's company, and evenings spent talking with Emma, my increasingly close friend. But those rumors, though I tried to ignore them, crept in like cold gusts from the past. My father, Richard, had once been a confident man, always maintaining a calm, authoritative presence in the family. He worked at the insurance company with a salary that supported a comfortable lifestyle for Linda and Mike. But after that Christmas night 2 years ago, when Grandpa Henry cut off all financial support, everything began to unravel. His company faced market struggles, and he, distracted by family tensions, couldn't hold on to his managerial position. He was fired 6 months after the incident and hadn't found stable work since. The savings he had accumulated from Grandpa Henry's money meant for me had been squandered on luxuries. A new car for Mike family vacations and parties to keep up appearances with neighbors. When Grandpa Henry's money stopped coming, they could no longer sustain that lifestyle. Linda, once proud of being the perfect housewife, couldn't adapt to earning a living. She had never worked, never needed to. Her skills were limited to hosting parties and shopping. When the family had to move out of the Maple Ridge house, the house I sold to invest in my future, they relocated to a small 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of town, which Linda called unworthy. The apartment was cramped and run down with stained walls and a leaky plumbing system, a painful contrast to the luxurious house they once called home. They sold Mike's car, his expensive toy collection, and even Linda's prized jewelry. But the debts kept piling up, from mortgage loans to unpaid bills. Mike, the brother once hailed as the future of the Parker family, dropped out of college after 1 semester. Accustomed to being pampered, he couldn't handle the pressure of academics or responsibility. Instead of continuing his education, Mike took a job at a fast food restaurant in town. But that job, standing behind a counter, dealing with demanding customers and working long shifts, was something he wasn't prepared for. Mike, who once mocked me for doing similar work, now faced the reality that he lacked the skills or patience to succeed in such an environment. His co-workers complained that he was slow, unfocused, and prone to mistakes. He was fired after 3 months, and since then bounced from job to job, never lasting long. I learned these details not because I sought them out, but through whispers from old acquaintances in Indiana. A few of Grandpa Henry's friends, still in touch with him, shared the story of Richard's family downfall as a cautionary tale. They said Linda was now trying to sell products online without success. My father worked part-time at an auto repair shop, but the income wasn't enough to cover living expenses. They lived in hardship, and for the first time they faced the reality I had known since childhood: scarcity and the struggle to survive. A month after Linda's call, I received another letter from my father. It wasn't an apology like the last one, but a plea. He wrote that the family was on the brink of bankruptcy. The apartment they rented was now at risk of eviction due to unpaid rent. Mike, after being fired from his 3rd job, had given up on finding steady work and started hanging out with a bad crowd, drinking and causing trouble in town. My father wrote that he had no one else to turn to, that I was their last hope. He used the word family repeatedly, as if it could awaken some sense of duty in me. I read the letter in my room at Grandpa Henry's mansion, sitting on the king-size bed I still wasn't entirely used to. Each word felt like a knife reopening old wounds. I remembered the years of being pushed aside, being called unworthy, being compared to Mike, as a reminder that I was never good enough. I remembered the nights lying on the creaky bed in the attic, wondering why I wasn't loved. And I remembered that Christmas night when I learned that everything I had longed for, a home, an opportunity, had been stolen by my father and Linda. I called Grandpa Henry and told him about the letter. He listened, his eyes darkening just as they had that Christmas night 2 years ago. "What are you going to do?" he asked, his voice steady but not pressuring. He always respected my decisions, though I knew he was still furious about what Richard had done. "I'm not going to help them," I said, my voice firm. "They had their chance. Mike had everything I didn't: a car, a nice room, our parents' love. If he has to work to survive now, that's a lesson he needs to learn." I pulled myself up from nothing. "I don't owe them anything." Grandpa Henry nodded, saying nothing more. But I knew he approved of my decision. He had once wanted to sue Richard to seek justice for me, But I had chosen to let the past go, and now I chose not to let it drag me back. While Richard's family struggled in Indiana, I continued my journey in Boston. I aced my midterms, and Emma, my close friend, threw a small party to celebrate. She had become an essential part of my life, not just for her radiant smile, but for the way she made me feel like I was enough. I took on more work at Grandpa Henry's company, handling larger projects, and even leading a small construction job in suburban Boston. Each step was proof that I didn't need my father's or Linda's validation to succeed. I also began writing a book not to recount my story, but to document the lessons I'd learned about resilience, finding self-worth, and overcoming the scars of the past. I didn't know if it would ever be published, but writing it was a way to heal, to turn pain into strength. One winter day, as I walked through downtown Boston, I unexpectedly saw Mike. He was standing on a street corner wearing a thin jacket, his face gaunt and his eyes sunken. I stopped, unsure whether to approach, but he saw me first and his eyes lit up with a flicker of hope. "Ethan," he called, his voice hoarse. How are you?" I nodded, keeping my distance. "I'm fine, Mike. You..." He gave a weak smile, no longer the arrogant boy I once knew. "Not great," he admitted. Things aren't like they used to be. Can you help me? Just a little. I don't have anyone else." I looked at him, remembering the times he was favored, the times I was pushed aside. "Mike," I said, my voice calm but unyielding. "I had to stand on my own when no one helped me. You can too. Get a job. Learn to take responsibility. Don't look to me to fix what your family did wrong." I turned and walked away, continuing down Boston's snow-covered streets. I didn't look back. Not because I didn't care, but because I had chosen myself.